In medieval England, harvest days meant a laborer could walk into a wheat field at sunrise and never return by sunset. Such endings were not tragedies, but possibilities quietly accepted by everyone involved. The harvest season was a test of endurance, determining if families would eat through winter or starve. This knowledge hung over every worker like an invisible weight, heavier than any bundle of grain. Before the first light touched the fields, men, women, and children rose from restless sleep, their bodies already aching from previous days of labor. Yet there was no thought of delay. Timing ruled the harvest with absolute authority. Wheat could not wait. Weather could not be trusted. Daylight was too precious to waste. The air at dawn carried a chill that seeped into bones. Within hours, that chill would give way to heat pressing down without mercy. Tools were simple and unforgiving, sickles with curved blades that demanded precision. One careless motion could slice flesh as easily as stalk. Workers understood this instinctively. Injury meant more than pain. It meant lost wages, lost food, and perhaps the slow unraveling of survival. The field stretched wide and silent before them, yet it was not peaceful. Every stalk represented hours of labor still ahead, and every hour carried risk. As the sun climbed higher, the rhythm of harvesting took hold, steady, repetitive, and relentless, binding the workers into a shared motion that left little room for thought beyond the next swing. Bending, cutting, gathering, and binding formed a cycle repeated hundreds of times, each movement wearing down muscles already pushed close to their limits. The wheat scratched against skin and filled the air with dust that clung to throats, making breathing a conscious effort rather than an instinct. Sweat ran freely, soaking clothes. Stinging eyes, yet stopping to wipe it away meant falling behind. Falling behind meant drawing the attention of overseers whose expectations were shaped by necessity. Hunger grew quickly in such labor, but meals were sparse and brief, taken where one stood, often consisting of coarse bread and small portions that dulled appetite without restoring strength. Water was precious, and though it was shared carefully, it rarely felt sufficient. Time lost its usual meaning, measured not in minutes but in rows cut and bundles tied, until the day became a blur of effort and fatigue. Conversation was minimal, not because workers lacked words but because breath was better saved for endurance. In this environment, silence became a form of cooperation, respecting the struggle of others. As afternoon approached, the true toll of the harvest revealed itself in subtle signs of strain. Some ignored these signals, pushing forward with determination fueled by necessity. Others slowed almost imperceptibly, hoping fatigue would not betray them before day's end. The danger of exhaustion was as real as any injury, weakening even the strongest laborer. There were no medics nearby, no shaded shelters, only the open field, an unspoken understanding that everyone must endure if the harvest was to succeed. When someone faltered, others noticed, but did not always stop, not from cruelty, but from the knowledge that pausing might endanger the entire effort. Survival demanded a difficult balance between compassion and necessity. By late afternoon, the light softened, but the labor did not. The final hours proved hardest. Muscles resisted every movement, turning simple tasks into acts of will. The bundles of wheat seemed heavier. The distance across the field appeared longer. Fatigue altered perception, making each step feel uncertain and each breath shallow. It was during these hours that accidents were most likely, when concentration wavered. Those who had harvested for years fought against it with stubborn focus, reminding themselves that the day was nearly done. The work must be finished before darkness. The field, once silent, now seemed to hum with effort, aware of the strain. When evening finally approached and the last bundles were secured, relief did not arrive as joy, but as quiet release. Because the body often took longer to recognize safety than the mind, workers looked across the harvested land not with pride but with exhaustion. Some would return home carrying the aches of the day like invisible burdens, knowing they would rise again before dawn to repeat the process. Others might not return at all, claimed by injury, illness, or simple collapse. The harvest was necessary, and necessity did not pause for individual hardship. A day harvesting wheat was a measure of survival written into muscle, breath, and endurance, a reminder that life itself depended on the strength to continue long after the body wished to stop. As dusk settled, the landscape seemed indifferent to what it had taken. The return from the fields was slower. Exhaustion altered the rhythm of movement. Tools that had felt manageable at dawn now weighed heavily in tired hands. Shoulders bent not only from labor, but from the knowledge that tomorrow would bring the same demands. Conversation began to return in scattered fragments, voices low and hoarse. As workers spoke briefly about the weather, the crop, or small concerns at home, these exchanges were quiet confirmations that each person had endured the day, still present, still able to speak, still part of the fragile chain of survival. Reaching the village did not mean the work was finished. The harvest extended beyond the field. Bundles needed stacking, storage spaces required preparation, and animals demanded feeding. The body, already strained, was asked to give a little more, and most complied. Families moved with practiced coordination, each member understanding their role. Hunger pressed harder now that effort had paused, yet meals remained simple. Eating was less about pleasure than restoration, preparing the body for the next day's demands. Even the act of sitting down could feel unfamiliar after so many hours of motion. Night brought darkness, but not always peace. The toll of harvest labor did not vanish. Many lay down with limbs that trembled slightly, skin marked by scratches and blisters. Sleep came quickly for some, yet it was rarely deep, interrupted by lingering aches, or the persistent awareness that dawn would arrive too soon. Others remained awake longer. Their minds replayed the day's effort, measuring what had been accomplished against what remained. The quiet of the night carried its own weight, filled with thoughts of weather, yield, and scarcity. The harvest season did not allow the comfort of certainty. Even a successful day could be undone by rain, spoilage, or misfortune. For those who had faltered, the night could feel even heavier. A strained muscle might stiffen, a small cut might swell with infection. In a world without reliable medicine, such conditions carried risks. Recovery depended on time and care that the harvest rarely allowed. Families watched these signs closely, weighing whether a person could return to work. Sparing one worker meant increasing the burden on others, threatening the harvest's success. Compassion existed, but it moved within the narrow boundaries set by necessity. Yet despite the hardship, the harvest also created a shared sense of endurance. That bound communities together in ways less demanding seasons did not. Each person understood that the labor was collective, that the grain gathered would sustain them all. This understanding did not lessen the strain, but it gave it meaning, turning repetition into purpose and fatigue into proof of effort. A day harvesting wheat was a demonstration of how survival depended on persistence, cooperation, and endurance. When the village finally settled into silence, the fields remained waiting in darkness, ready to demand the same strength again when morning returned.